Okay, so you're here with us because you want to get the lowdown without drowning in information overload, right? Well, you've come to the right place. Think of this as your shortcut to knowledge. Today, we're focusing on a really intriguing new release in the world of watches, the Beda'a Eclipse II.
We're going beyond the spec sheet here, giving you the inside track on what makes this watch tick, why it matters. We'll uncover the story behind the brand Beta itself, the design philosophy and the technical aspects, especially that jumping hour complication. It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it caught my eye too. So, first things first. Beta. Not exactly a household name, at least not yet. What's the backstory here? Fill us in.
Well, the interesting thing is Beta is relatively young. Founded in 2016 by a Qatari entrepreneur, Haider Al-Sawaidi, and his vision was pretty unique. He wanted to position the Middle East not just as a consumer of luxury watches, but as a contributor, a creator, a force to be reckoned with in the industry.
It's a bold statement, a real shift in perspective. So who's driving this vision forward now? Who's at the helm?
So right now, the brand is led by Sohab Magnum. He's both the CEO and the chief designer. And his background is really fascinating. He's an engineer by training, but also studied design in London and Milan. And get this, he actually produced watches under his own name before joining Beda'a.
Wow, so he's got that technical foundation combined with a real design sensibility. That's a powerful combination. Now, I read that Beta has several distinct collections. Where does this Eclipse II fit in? How does it relate to their other watches?
Good question. So they've got four main lines: Attrayant, Fortress, Angles, and Eclipse. And what's interesting for us here is that the Eclipse is their only round watch. All the others, as the name suggests, are more geometric angular. So the Eclipse really stands out visually. It's got its own distinct identity.
So the Eclipse is the round peg in a square hole, so to speak, or maybe a round watch in a world of angles. I like it. And this isn't their first rodeo with the Eclipse, is it? It was an earlier model, right? The Eclipse.
You got it. The report mentioned the first Eclipse was quite successful, known for its rather unconventional time display. It used a dragging hour disc and what they called a mysterious minutes display.
Dragging hour disc and mysterious minutes.
Okay, no, just teasing us. We'll have to dive into that another time. But for now, let's stick with the Eclipse II. The big news here is the jump to a jumping hour display. For those who aren't watch nerds like us, break that down. What is a jumping hour and why should we care?
Sure. So imagine this. Instead of the hour hand smoothly sweeping around the dial, a jumping hour watch has a digital-style window that displays the hour, and it jumps instantaneously, exactly when the hour changes. No slow movement, bam, it's there. Kind of like a digital clock, but with all the intricate mechanics of a traditional watch.
I love that. It's a blend of old and new. That instantaneous jump must be so satisfying to see. Now, the report also mentioned a regulator layout on the dial. What exactly does that look like? Okay, so with a regulator layout, the time-telling elements are separated instead of the usual three hands in the center. So on the Eclipse II, you have the jumping hour at the top, usually around 12 o'clock. Then the minutes are on a subdial in the middle, and the small second subdial is down at 6 o'clock.
So everything has its own dedicated space. Makes sense.
Right. And here's another cool thing. The crown isn't on the side of the case like usual. It's also at 6 o'clock. Really unusual placement. But historically, this layout provided greater precision in master clocks, hence the term regulator.
So it's a nod to history. And visually, it's just so different. I bet it makes a statement on the wrist. Now, beyond the layout itself, the dial sounds pretty amazing. Lots of textures and layers.
Yeah.
Paint us a picture. What are we looking at here?
All right, so picture this. You've got a multi-layered dial. Real attention to detail. The lower section has these cream-colored motifs, polished and satin finishes. Creates a textured backdrop for two subdials. They're arranged in a figure-8 pattern.
Oh, that's cool. A figure 8.
Yeah, and the top subdial, the one with the jumping hours and minutes, that's made from aventurine.
Aventurine.
It's a type of glass, has these shimmering metallic inclusions, looks like a starry sky. It's gorgeous. And below that, at 6 o'clock, the small second subdial has this deeply textured circular satin finish. Very tactile.
So we've got stars and texture. Sounds stunning. And speaking of inspiration, the report mentioned a very specific source for the dial design. Something tied to the brand's roots.
You're right. Beta says the whole design is inspired by the landscapes of Qatar. You know, the flowing desert sands and the vast night sky full of stars. The cream-colored motifs evoke the boons, and the aventurine obviously represents the stars. It's more than just a pretty face, it's got cultural meaning.
Love that. It's like wearing a piece of Qatar on your wrist. Okay, let's get technical for a minute. The case is 37 millimeters, which is on the smaller side these days, and it's made from 904L stainless steel. Why is that significant?
So the 37 millimeter size gives it a classic feel. Understated. But that 904L steel, that's the real story. It's a higher grade of stainless steel, more resistant to corrosion, and when it's polished, it has a slightly different luster. Brighter. It's often used in high-end watches. You know brands that really prioritize durability and quality.
So it's built to last, not just a pretty face. And the report also highlighted the rather large bezel and expressive curved lugs. What do those design elements bring to the table?
So the large bezel, despite the smaller case size, gives it a bit more presence on the wrist. And the curved lugs, well, they can really change how a watch wears, how it sits. It can give it a vintage vibe or a more modern sculpted look depending on the design.
Right. It's all about the details. All right, let's talk about the heart of the watch, the movement. The Eclipse dial grill uses the caliber of BMJ01. And the report describes it as being based on the SW300 with a jumping hour module by Dubois Depraz. Got lots to unpack there. Help us out.
No problem. So the SW300 is a really solid automatic movement used by lots of brands. Think of it as a workhorse, reliable. But what makes the Eclipse II special is that Dubois Depraz jumping hour module. Dubois Depraz is a Swiss company that specializes in creating complex mechanisms. Complications. They're the best in the business. So you're getting a proven base movement with a top-of-the-line complication.
Best of both worlds. Now, the report mentioned that a jumping hour is a complex and exacting complication. It seems so simple, though. The hour jumps. What's so hard about that?
But the simplicity is deceptive. To get that perfect, instantaneous jump right at the top of the hour takes serious engineering. The movement has to store up energy over the course of the hour and then release it all at once. And it has to be a clean jump. No hesitation, no bounce. It's a real balancing act.
That makes sense. It's a tiny little machine doing some very precise work.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. The report also gives some specs: 28,800 vibrations per hour, 52-hour power reserve. What does that tell us about the watch?
Okay, so 28,800 vibrations per hour. That's a standard frequency. Usually means a smoother seconds hand. And better timekeeping overall. The 52-hour power reserve, that's pretty good. Means you can take the watch off Friday night and it'll still be ticking Monday morning. No need to wind it.
Very convenient.
Oh, and it also has a stop seconds mechanism. That means you can stop the seconds hand for precise time setting. Handy feature.
And of course, for those of us who like to admire the inner workings, the movement is visible through a see-through caseback. Always a nice touch. Okay, moving on to practicality. What kind of strap options do we have here?
You have a choice of alligator leather or ostrich leather, both with a pin buckle. Classic and elegant.
And you're thinking about adding this to your collection. Production is limited to just 100 pieces per year, and the price is 4,000 Swiss francs. Definitely sounds exclusive.
It is. 100 pieces a year makes it pretty rare, catches the eye of collectors for sure. And that price point for a watch with a Dubois Depraz jumping hour, that's very competitive. You're getting a lot of watch for your money.
For sure. And for those who want to do their own research, the reference number is BQE20525537. And you can find more information on the Beda'a's website, beda'swatches.com. Okay, so as we wrap this up, what are the key takeaways here? What should we remember about the Beda'a Eclipse II?
Okay, so here's what you need to know. Beda'a is a brand with a mission. They're putting the Middle East on the map in the world of luxury watchmaking. And the Eclipse II, well, it's more than just a watch. It's a statement. It's got that unique design, the regulator layout, the beautiful dial with aventurine and those cool textures. And it's got a story. Inspired by the landscapes of Qatar, plus it's got that incredible jumping hour complication made by the best in the business, Dubois Depraz.
So it's got looks, it's got brains, and it's got a soul. What more could you want?
Exactly. And for you, our listeners, if you're looking for a watch that's different, something special, with a story to tell, the Beda'a Eclipse II is worth checking out. It makes you think, doesn't it, about how culture and technology can come together in watchmaking. And it's just one example. There's so many incredible timepieces out there, each with its own history and inspiration. So go explore, discover those hidden stories. You will be disappointed.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that.
Yeah.
Until next time, happy watch hunting.